Hello there, Mike Seeklander with Wilson Combat. Let me tell you that I believe you always think about being faster or more accurate. One of the things that I found with my students, one of the pieces of misinformation is that aiming is the problem. We focus so much on aiming when we're shooting a handgun because it's the visual part of the equation that we forget about everything else. And there's a possibility that you might be losing time because you're over aiming. And I actually have a timer on. I'm going to show you that here in a little bit during live fire. But let's talk about the aiming process first. Let me dispel any myths. The biggest problem in handgun shooting and not shooting accurately is not the aiming process. I know you're thinking, well, Mike, you have to aim the handgun. I've never said you don't have to aim the handgun, but the biggest problem is not the aiming process. The biggest problem in shooting that causes you to miss, more likely than not, is the gripping process, meaning you're moving the handgun in some manner with your supporting fingers or your wrist or whatever else. It's not even trigger control. Everybody thinks it's aiming or trigger control. It's not, it's grip control. Of course, I've talked to you about that in different videos. Let's establish a few things. Number one, in order to fire a handgun and hit an accurate shot in competitive environments or defensive environments, we need to establish or find what we call alignment. Actually, technically, we need to establish alignment, and then we need to verify that alignment and then maintain that alignment of the handgun to fire the shot. So what is the alignment of the handgun? And your brain is probably going, well, Mike, alignment means front sight in the rear sight notch on the target. Well, in reality, verifying the alignment of the handgun isn't actually that complex. This is an unloaded and clear firearm for the camera purpose. So let's say, for example, I'm the distance I am from you right now. I can verify the alignment of the handgun just by pointing it. I don't need to focus on the front sight. So if you're thinking, Mike, I can't see the front sight clearly anymore because I hit that age or I have some visual issues, guess what? You can fire and hit an accurate shot all day long without focusing on the front sight. It's like pointing your finger. So to establish alignment, we really have to answer a question, how far away are we? Right now, as I teach this, I am 3 or 4 steps from the camera. At this distance, I can point my finger just like you can point your finger at me, and you can establish if it's aligned left, right, up, or down. So at this distance with a handgun, I am literally aligning it or verifying alignment with the slide itself. I might see the sights, but I'm not so worried about the sights, and I'm certainly not taking the time to focus on the front sight and then trying to put it in the rear sight notch, because the visual focal, the focus point on the front sight takes me time. And that's the whole key. I don't want to waste any time over aiming the handgun. Now, let's say we doubled the distance. You know, maybe in the background you can see the flags of the targets. Let's say I was back there. Well, what does it take to verify alignment at that distance? Well, in that case, my visual focus has to be on the sighting system, right, for iron sights. I'm probably focusing more on the front sight than the rear sight because that's going to show me the difference in alignment. But I will tell you once again, even at 7, 8, 9, or 10 yards, most of you are probably over aiming the handgun, meaning you're over aligning the sights. So let me go ahead and show you live fire on a target, and I'm going to show you the difference in time between me taking the time to focus clearly on the front sight versus just verifying alignment. Don't forget, I define what alignment is. Alignment is enough alignment of the handgun to hit the target you're trying to hit at the distance you're trying to hit it at. So let's try that. So now I'm going to show you the difference in time if you're over aiming the handgun, and I'll call out the time the timer spits out every time I do this. And I'm going to alternate between 2 techniques. One technique, I'm going to point the handgun and I'm going to line the handgun just literally by pointing the slide, because the target is close enough. I can hit that target. It's big enough where I don't need front sight focus. I don't need to focus clearly on the front sight in the rear sight notch. And then I'll actually make my eyes visually focus on the front sight where I can see the serrations and the fiber optic, and you're going to see there's a difference in time. It takes a second or moment of time for your eyes to focus on a given point. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. 52. That's a hit at 0.48. So now I'm going to extend the gun the same exact speed, but I'm going to make my eyes visually focus hard on the front sight. 87. And that's a 91. So you see there's 4/10 to 5/10 difference or more from me extending the handgun as fast as I can and verifying alignment. Remember, we always have to create and verify alignment versus verify alignment, or over verify alignment would be a better term, by making my eyes visually focus on the front sight and verify it's perfectly aligned in the rear sight notch. So I don't need that at this distance. Now granted, that target is about 9.5 or so yards away, maybe 10 yards away. If the target was twice the distance, I absolutely would have to stop the gun, focus harder on the front sight, and verify that alignment. Keep in mind, verification of the alignment process is like a dial. It's constantly turning left or right as the target is easier or harder, farther away or closer to you. And that's something you have to learn, and the only way to learn that is to get on the range and misalign the sights and see where you hit, and then work on skills like this. So there you go. Don't over aim your handgun. It's costing you time. Big difference. So what amount of alignment do you actually need to see in the rear sight notch to hit, let's just say, a 7-yard target? And 7 yards is a great distance to talk about because 7 yards is a very long average distance for a self-defense situation, and it's probably a very common distance for the large majority of the targets we shoot in matches. So how much alignment do you need at that distance? And I'm going to tell you, it's not as much as you think. And here's the deal. If the front sight is anywhere in the rear sight notch, anywhere, meaning this front sight could be aligned all the way to the left where I can only see the edge of the sight, or all the way to the right and I can only see the edge of the sight, or almost all the way out of the notch, or almost all the way down inside the notch, all of those hits will still hit an 8-inch circle, give or take, in the up center chest or on an IDPA target, assuming we don't move the gun when we fire it. And I'll show you this on a target here in a second. I'm going to purposefully misalign the sights and let you watch where those hits go. Okay, so as promised, I'm going to shoot a series of shots and I'm going to tell you exactly what misalignment I'm doing. So first shot's going to be a test shot. I'm going to aim dead center, perfect alignment of the front and rear sight, no movement of the handgun, and I'm going to slowly press the trigger. That's pretty much center of the circle, okay? So now I'm going to aim at the same spot and I'm going to misalign the sights left. So right now I just barely see the right edge of the front sight. It's all the way to the left, and that went just to the edge of the target outside the zero area. So now I'm going to misalignment the front sight all the way to the right. So I could just barely see that front sight, and then went to the right. So now I'm going to misalignment the front sight all the way out. So it's literally pretty much all the way out of the rear sight notch, and that one went high, and now I'm going to misalignment low. So now it's low, barely to the tip of the front sight. So if you look at the target, you see a shot left, right, up, or down. That's with complete misalignment. Like literally, the red fiber optic is almost all the way out of the notch. I can only see the edge of the sight. Now, if I just take the front sight and just touch the left edge of the rear sight and fire a shot. Now I'm just going to touch the right edge. Now I'm going to touch just a little bit low. Now I'm going to touch just a little bit high. You see, those all basically went in that upper center 8-inch circle. So those are all good shots. So my point to you is, I don't need perfect sight alignment to hit these shots. I also don't need a perfect visual focus on the front sight. So if I look at the target right now, I have somewhat blurry sights, but I can align the sights just as easily as I can with the front sight focal point. And I can hit center of the target pretty much all day long. So to verify and establish alignment, we have to know what the distance is. We talked about the closer distance, 3 or 4 yards, longer distance, 7 to 10 yards. Well, what about very long distance? Let's say we're 20 yards away. And I'm going to tell you once again, oftentimes aiming is not the problem. Moving the gun when you fire it is the problem at that distance. Most people don't make the mistake of aiming wrong, they hold wrong. They move the gun when they fire. But assuming you're holding the gun properly, now I need to have my visual focus on the front sight. I should be able to see this beautiful little serrations in this Wilson Combat front sight, and I need to have distinct alignment in the rear sight, meaning there needs to be equal light gap on both sides of the front sight, And if I took my finger and put it across the top edge of the rear sight, that should touch the top edge of the blade of the front sight. And I'm actually aiming with the top edge of the front sight. I'm not aiming with the fiber optic. The fiber optic simply draws your eye in if you have a fiber optic on your handgun. Now, if we moved even farther back, then I'm focusing on the top left corner of the front sight, and I'm comparing it to the top left corner of the rear sight, and vice versa on the right-hand side of the sight. So now I'm comparing corner to corner for very precise alignment. But I will tell you, literally 9 times out of 10, maybe 98 times out of 100, you don't need that level of alignment. And if you train aligning the sights at that level, right, at that 6, 7, 8, 12-yard shot, your brain is going to tell you, I have to align the sights more than necessary, and you're going to waste time. Matter of fact, you'll be unable to fire that shot because your brain is running through the loop of trying to aim the handgun. I call that over-aiming, and it's probably costing you 4/10, maybe 6/10 in time. So in closing, I don't want you to misunderstand me. You didn't hear Mike Seeklander say, hey, you should never focus on the front sight. What I did say was we have to hit any given target, establish alignment, verify alignment, and maintain that alignment while we're firing the shot. The alignment changes based on the difficulty of the shot, so don't forget that. So how do you test this stuff? How do you figure this out? If you need to focus hard on the front sight to make it sure it's inside the rear sight notch, you go to the range, you start a cardboard target up, you mark some spots off on the ground and shoot from 3 yards and 5 yards and 7 yards and 10 or farther back and learn based on what the alignment is on your handgun, exactly what you need to do to verify the alignment and hit an accurate shot at whatever you're trying to hit. And then you repeat that. And then once you understand visually what that looks like, then you set up your training drills so you repetitively work through those visual stimuli, and then you learn from that process. So there you have it. Remember, we don't want to give time up. We always want to be as accurate as we can, but we never want to sacrifice time. And if you want to be fast and accurate, go to the range, take some time, and figure out if you are over-aiming your handgun. Of course, if you haven't subscribed, go down and click that subscribe button. If you have a comment or a question for me or any of the other pros at Wilson Combat, please put a comment. If you like this stuff, let us know, Mike. We want more like this. If you don't like it and want something different, then comment away as well. Stay safe.